Hola, bonjour, shalom, and welcome to the NOLS podcast. Leadership Week is here, and we are coordinating with grads around the world to promote NOLS and organize fun events. Head over to nols.edu/leadershipweek for info. Well, in honor of Leadership Week, we have gathered two NOLS All-Stars, John Kanengieter and Liz Tuohy, to discuss the leadership curriculum here at NOLS. Let's watch.
NOLS,
the National Outdoor Leadership School.
a preeminent school in the world for expedition training. Solid skills come from solid instruction.
The NOLS Podcast.
Thanks for joining the NOLS Podcast. I'm Liz Tuohy.
And my name's John Kanengieter.
I've been working at NOLS for 15 years as a field instructor, administrator, and currently as a risk management consultant for other outdoor programs.
And I started at NOLS about 25 years ago, working as an instructor and eventually an administrator, and right now, presently, the director for leadership.
And today we're going to talk about leadership.
That's right, Liz. Today, leadership is the topic. We'd love to give you an overview of how NOLS looks at leadership and the way we structure it. But before we started talking about it, we asked you what you think about it. And so we posted a question on our Facebook page about what words or concepts come to mind when you think about leadership. And we got a whole bunch of responses. Yeah. So why don't we just go through just a few of those.
So Luis R. wrote, influence and interpersonal interaction.
Eric E. Wrote, leaders have followers that want to follow versus have to follow.
And Karen L. gave us a thoughtful response here. Stable, supportive, clear goals determined by a comprehensive assessment.
All right, and Diane E., she writes, integrity, no matter what the circumstances.
Great. I like this one. Chanel S. simply says, courage.
I like that. And in more words, Moki K writes, and I love this, a good leader should be prepared to do the following. And look, it's all in bolds and exclamation points. Educate, inspire, and motivate.
That's great. So that kind of tacks on here. Andrew R. wrote, excellent leadership requires the right attitude.
All right. Well, obviously, folks out, we all have concepts of what leadership might be, and it's a big topic for sure. In fact, lots of you go to the library and look at leadership, and there's rows and rows on it. So everyone's got thoughts about leadership. We found it important in our history at NOLS to really define how we think about it. Paul Petzold started the school back in 1965 with a clear vision of wanting our students to be not only outdoor skills leaders, but leaders with their peers in outside of NOLS and beyond. Mm-hmm. And then about the mid-90s, we got together as a community, recognizing that we do in fact teach leadership at NOLS, but we talk about it in different ways. And what would it look like if we all got together and thought, here's how we define leadership? And that's basically what we're going to talk about today. So to do that, we have to first understand that we're going to pull this concept of leadership apart into three different parts, how NOLS looks at these things.
Great. Before you do that, can I throw one other piece out? I was really fascinated, so I never had the opportunity to meet or work with Paul Petzold, but in the late 90s, I was briefing staff who were going into the field about this new leadership language, and I had the opportunity to work with staff who'd been around since Paul's day, and the message I kept getting was, this is great, this is just further articulating what Paul was really trying to say. So that gave me a confirmation that we're not just coming up with something new, but we're really going into these kind of inherent truths of what we think leadership is. Yeah,
I'm glad you said that, because history is such an important part of the NOLS culture and the tradition of how we teach, which has maintained itself. Great. Well, as I was mentioning, we start to pull leadership apart. We look at it in three different constructs or concepts, and we'll define those out maybe for our viewers. But the first one is really about what is my role in leadership within a group, whether you're on an expedition or in the office, you have a leadership role. And then what are my skills that I might practice in leadership? And then what's my own personal style that I bring to the table? So we'll move forward on those, picking those out. And first of all, talking about those roles.
Great.
As I think about leadership in terms of roles, I love the way it's framed here because it gives a place for everyone and defines that every person in every group is in a leadership role. And that's maybe new for some folks to think about. But
do you want to talk a little bit about how NOLS defines leadership?
Yeah, great. If we were to define it in one sentence, say one sentence, we would look at it as leadership is appropriate and timely actions that guide or direct a group to set and achieve goals. So
I like that.
It's really about, taking a position within the group of influence to help a group achieve its goals. Pretty
Great.
simply said. Okay, so those roles that we were talking about, first we look at the role of designated leadership, and that one I think is usually pretty clear to folks. It's the person in charge, it's the head architect for the group, the one that's giving direction for the group. So easily seen in words like the boss, the supervisor, the CEO, the president, the course leader on a NOLS course, or it could be the small group expedition leader. So that obvious person that we're the buck stops here sort of person.
Great. The person people think of when they think of leader.
Most often.
Yep.
Yeah. But there's a relationship that they have with the second role that we have, which is really the active follower. And this is a hugely important relationship because it states that it's not just a one-way process, but it's actually a relationship that has two ways to it. And the active follower is really about, I love the word active because it means that I'm doing something. And the active follower is described as someone who's questioning the leader appropriately, supporting the leader in their decisions, and really looking at how they can support the overall leadership and vision of the group.
Great. So that takes us to peer leadership and self-leadership, which are a little trickier because your job isn't quite as clear. Peer leadership is what happens in the absence of a designated leader or among active followers. Peer leadership is influencing a group without the structure of that designated leader role. And it can be one of the most influential ways to drive a group towards a goal, but it can also be a challenging one to implement. If you have too many peer leaders who are unyielding in their opinions, you can end up with the concept of too many cooks spoil the broth. But if you don't have anybody speaking out, you can have a group walking into a hazard that in retrospect everybody knew about. So that takes us to the fourth role, which is self-leadership. And self-leadership is really related to character and action. So anytime you're operating from a place where you're accessing your gut feel or where you're choosing an action because you're thinking this is the right thing to do, you're operating from self-leadership. So examples of that might be that you actually put aside a personal accomplishment because you recognize you need to help the group. Or maybe you'll decide that you're going to admit that you made a mistake to a group even though you look bad, but you know that it's going to help the group grow.
Got it. Great. So as an overview for this 4 roles of leadership, I think about them in ways by function, and the designated leaders function in a hierarchical sense as looking down in the organization, where the active follower is looking up, and the peer leader is looking sort of out amongst the peers in the group. And self-leadership is about looking inward and finding the things that motivate you to act, like you said.
That's great. I really like that visual.
Yeah. Okay, so if those are our 4 roles of leadership, we move to what we consider 7 skills in expeditionary leadership. And again, we think of expedition, whether you're on a wilderness expedition or whether you're with a group of folks trying to achieve some goal, these are all appropriate.
Great.
So the first role that we think of or the first skill would be expedition behavior. And that's a term that Paul Petzl coined many years ago, I believe after having been on a number of expeditions himself to some of the highest peaks in the world, K2, Realizing that the best climbers, the best technicians don't always make the best expeditioners at the same time, and realizing that the success of an expedition is usually involving the skill of working with each other, and this term became expedition behavior. So it really means giving up my own goals at times for the good of the group, having a sense of humor, helping out, carrying weight when needed to, making the coffee pot in the break room, that sort of stuff.
So I'll speak to our second leadership skill, competence. Competence is really pretty straightforward. In Paul's example here, while it's not the only important skill, you're not going to make it to the top of a mountain if you don't have climbers with efficient movement skills and technical system skills. I always find it interesting that on month-long wilderness courses at NOLS, the students who get chosen by their peers to be student expedition leaders tend to be the students with good map reading skills and who know how to cook, because that's what people want in their group. We tend to focus easily on technical skills, and we also need to remember that in any kind of group, you need people with good planning skills, with good hazard mitigation and identification skills, and everybody needs the skills to look after themselves.
That's right. Our third skill that we employ at NOLS is this concept of communication and having communication skills. When I think about the communication aspect of an expeditionary skill, it's about the promoting of a message or giving a message, but also receiving a message and making sure those two messages are congruent. We often think of communication as the telling part, and we really try to teach that the listening is an incredibly important aspect of the communication skills.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and no matter where you are in whatever role of leadership, this aspect of communication skills looks differently, but a critical and important part of a successful expedition.
Great. So that takes us to our fourth leadership skill. And by the way, these are in no set order. This is really just an order we came up in which to talk about these skills. Judgment and decision making. So as a risk management consultant, when I'm talking to outdoor program directors, by and large, the thing that they tell me they value the most highly in their staff is judgment. So judgment and decision making, those are two different things that work together. I think of decision making as the overriding concept. You don't always need good judgment to make a decision, but judgment is more important when the outcome is uncertain, when the situation is dynamic, or when your information is less than ideal. And to have good judgment, you need to be able to weigh consequences. Is this a situation that could kill me, or is this a situation that will likely sprain my ankle? Good judgment involves being able to analyze complex factors. Here's a river, how fast is it going? Can I see the bottom? But maybe most importantly, it's not just analyzing the factors you can see, but recognizing the human influence on a situation. So part of being human is having egos, having timelines, having insecurities, and being able to recognize how those are playing out in the decisions a group is making is integral to judgment. So that takes us to tolerance for adversity and uncertainty. So tolerance for adversity and uncertainty, the most common explanation of that is turning challenges into opportunities. So someone who's really good at tolerance for adversity and uncertainty finds themselves in the middle of a long day of post-holing, and they're laughing. And you see them laughing, and they're laughing because they think it's funny that they're sprawled out in the middle of the snow trying to get up, but also because they're recognizing that this day is going to be a powerful influence on the team, and it's going to bring the team together and give the team momentum towards their goals that they wouldn't have gotten on a sunny, easy hiking day. The three real keys to having good tolerance for adversity and uncertainty are flexibility, perspective, and a sense of humor.
You know, I find with adversity and uncertainty, the real tricky part for me is the uncertain part. Holding myself in a challenge, but holding myself with the uncertainty of what the future is going to hold is a real skill, I think, that a lot of leaders really strive for. Skill number 6 for us is self-awareness. And self-awareness is that ability and that skill to be able to stop and look inward and identify, what am I really thinking, what am I really feeling, what do I really want in any situation right now, and to be able to access those those pieces of information and data are critically important as they supply data for the judgment and the decision making that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So self-awareness, the ability to look in and really decipher what's important and how things are affecting me. And then our seventh skill is vision in action. And I like this skill because just of the name,
Yes,
vision in action.
This is John's favorite skill.
It implies things are going to happen. And the leader has to have the ability and develop the skill of looking at the group and looking and thinking about what needs to happen in the future. And then being able to identify what are the action steps to get there. I often say that, vision without action is really just daydreaming, but then just action without vision is really chaos. And so that's why those two concepts are grouped together. So we've got roles of leadership, these skills of leadership that we just talked about, and now this style of leadership.
So before you shift,
Yeah.
you've got these 7 skills, and sometimes they're hard to remember all 7 of them. So we try to come up with these mnemonics that help. And at NOLS, we haven't come up with one that we've really settled on. But on our Facebook response, I got one that I kind of like and that might help you. So Lark T wrote, "What do I think of when I think of leadership? Every camper can take just 7 vitamins." Those correspond with expedition behavior, competence, communication skills, judgment and decision-making, tolerance, self-awareness, and vision in action. So one more time, that's every camper can take just 7 vitamins.
That could be very helpful for me.
Good.
Great, so that brings us to style of leadership. And really what that refers to is this concept that each of us may lead within the group, but we're going to do it in our own way, something that's different, and that everyone has a different style. For instance, if Liz is the designated leader of a group and she's practicing the skill of communication or vision in action, and likewise I am the leader of a group, the designated leader, and practicing the same skills, the way we're going to do it is going to show up a little differently.
Yeah.
And so whether
Neither is necessarily better.
Yeah, correct.
They can both
in
be
fact,
effective.
whether you're introverted or extroverted, whether you're a gregarious person or a quieter person, or depending on how your personality shows up, you're going to be showing a different style.
Yeah, I like to think that style, if you're developing your own style, your style is made up of your personality, it's made up of your passions, it's made up of your strengths, and it's made up of the experiences that you've had. So that gives you really a pretty large lens to look through. So I don't just have one style that I use over and over again, but I'll use situational leadership and self-awareness to decide which of my strengths or experiences I'm going to lean on today when I'm leading in a certain situation.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. And you mentioned the word situational. When I think about how does this all come together, the roles, the skills, the style, like how does this all work together? It's somewhat simple if you think of like a simple Venn diagram with the concept of you've got roles, you've got skills that you're implying in the other bubble, and the style in the third. Where that intersection is really situational leadership.
Good.
And it's that concept that I adjust my style, I adjust my skills, and I know where my role is in any group. And when I'm thinking about it that way, it helps give me a choice of what I might do next. Because I often think like leadership is not what you do, but it's really what you do next.
This is a great opportunity because you as a viewer might be wondering, so how can I use these roles and skills and style concepts to become a better leader? So one thing you could do is sign up for a NOLS course, but that's not soon enough. Really, what I'm wondering is how you can use this tomorrow. And here's a few ideas. So NOLS is based on this concept of experiential education. And experiential education is 3 different things put together. It's theory, it's experience, and it's reflection. So what we've been talking about today is leadership theory. And what you need to do to implement it is to focus on your experience. And your experience can be anything you do today. It can be going to a college class. It can be working with a group of people on a project. It can be going on a personal expedition. It could be being on a sports team. So my recommendation is that today you go do whatever you're doing today and you think about roles. Throughout your whole day, think, what leadership role am I in as I walk through my day? And then in the evening, put some reflection time to that and say, was I right? Was there something I could have done more effectively if I looked at myself through the lens of being in a different role? And then tomorrow, think about skills. Think about what skills am I implementing today? Is communication the best skill in this situation? And then in the evening, think back on it and think, could I have done that differently? I think judgment and decision making is a great one to be thinking about. When you make important decisions, think, what's the decision making technique I'm using here? And then whenever the outcome is available, look at the outcome and say, could I have made a better decision? That's the reflection piece.
Great. Well, other places you might go check if you are interested in looking at more on this would be to look us up on the web at nols.edu. Until we see each other again, thanks a lot for joining us in this podcast, and thanks for taking time to talk leadership.
Thanks, John. Have fun with it.
Thanks to John and Liz for that overview of leadership here at NOLS. If you are on Facebook or YouTube, you can comment right here below, no excuses, or you can hit us up at twitter.com/NOLSEDU. Also, please comment and rate our podcast on iTunes. Thank you for watching. This is William signing off from in front of NOLS headquarters here in Lander, Wyoming.
I was looking for this.